Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us. It's a journalist extraordinaire, winner of the I.F. Stone Award. It's called the Izzy. Is that what they call it, Aaron? They call it the Izzy?
They call it the Izzy.
And here it is. There he is. Aaron Matei, a writer for The Nation magazine, got an award for doing his meticulous work with RussiaGate and debunking the conspiracy theory that is RussiaGate. So great work. So he's with us. So this is what happened. I'm going to show you what happened, Aaron. The Washington Post wrote an article that said that YouTube was recommending a video to explain the Mueller report from RT. Oh my God. There it is. There it is. It says, Rachel Maddow tweets out, "Death by algorithm. YouTube recommended Russia Today for understanding Mueller report." She just tweets that out there as if it's inaccurate. As if that's inaccurate. And so what I immediately did was I tweeted, I said, the thing that I've lied to my own audience about for 3 years straight, turns out you'd have gotten much better information in journalism if you got it straight from Russia. That's how unhinged and shitty MSNBC's reporting has been. No, seriously, comedians are better. And the reason why YouTube can't recommend Rachel Maddow's coverage of RussiaGate is because they have a policy that they don't recommend conspiracy videos. And that's what Rachel Maddow does. She does conspiracy videos. She's writing the new book. It was first Alex Jones, and now it's Rachel Maddow. And she's not stopping. So that's why they can't recommend her video. They have to recommend, here's what Glenn Greenwald said. She says, Maddow is claiming the Republic is existentially threatened because YouTube recommended a show hosted by Chris Hedges, a Pulitzer Prize-winning ex-New York Times reporter, talking to Aaron Matei, or do you say Aaron Mate, the Izzy Award winner, all because it's hosted on RT. Both have more journalistic achievements than she does. So, and then, Aaron, you briefly responded by saying, if YouTube were to recommend your show, it'd be recommending the leading purveyor of now debunked Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, falsehoods, and innuendo of the last 2.5 years. Now, Aaron, let me just get your quick response to when you saw that tweet.
Well, the article that Maddow is tweeting out is hilarious because, it talks about this threat of propaganda coming from the interview I did with Chris Hedges, but it doesn't say anything about it that's false. It mentions that we criticized RussiaGate conspiracy theories, which is exactly what we did because so much of RussiaGate was based on now debunked conspiracy theories. So it doesn't give any examples beyond that of what was inaccurate about the interview because the fact is there was nothing inaccurate about the interview. And that's the point here. What actually threatens these people is not propaganda or inaccuracies, but it's actually the truth and accurate information because they've been.
And isn't it kind of stunning to you, Aaron, that the Washington Post would write an article purposely misleading their own readers? Because what they did, well, let's go through the article real quick, right? And then you can break it down. So it was written by these two guys, Greg Tinberg and Drew Harwell. Now, Greg Tinberg also has a horrible reputation and a horrible track record. He wrote that Prop or Not article for them, right? Correct, Aaron?
That's right. That was the article a few years ago, basically based on this anonymous McCarthyite blacklist that listed all these websites that are supposed outposts for Russian propaganda. It included Black Agenda Report, Truthdig, and other leftist sites. So basically, the Tinberg and the Washington Post handed over the power to this anonymous group called Prop or Not. We have no idea who they are, who funds them, gave them the power to designate who is an outpost for Russian influence. And of course, it so happens to be websites that challenge the prevailing establishment consensus. So this McCarthyite and really Soviet-style censorship, basically, trying to blacklist websites for pushing back on establishment narratives. And that's who Craig Tinberg is. So no surprise now to see him continuing with this kind of stuff.
Just real quick, could you imagine getting into journalism and then doing stuff like this? Isn't that shocking to you?
Yeah, unfortunately, it speaks to the different motives that some people have. Some people get into journalism to challenge power. Some people get into journalism, and whether that's their intention or not, they end up being puppets for power. And that's what Craig Timberg is right now.
Okay, so here's the article. It says, when the report by special counsel Robert Mueller came out last week, offering the most authoritative account yet of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, YouTube recommended one video source hundreds of thousands of times to viewers seeking information. A watchdog says RT, the global media operation funded by the Russian government. So that was the video that they were pushing. YouTube was recommending to hundreds of thousands of its own viewers a video from Russia talking about Mueller report. Let's just remind people that the countries that keep outside information out are called dictatorships. Okay. There's a company called Algo Transparency. They did this research and they figured out that YouTube was recommending Russia videos. So Algo Transparency, now who is this? Well, they were founded by a former YouTube engineer, Guillaume Cheslat, who's also done lots of bullshit work like this in the past. Analyzed the recommendations made by the 1,000 YouTube channels it tracks daily. The group found that 236 of those collectively recommended RTs on contact RussiaGate and Mueller report with Aaron Matei more than 400,000 times. So what this guy's research found was that YouTube's algorithms recommended a video by Aaron Matei, who I'm talking to right now, and Chris Hayes. And here it is. This is the interview they're talking about as being the thing that's horrible that YouTube is recommending. And it's Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges talking with Izzy Prize winner Aaron Matei, and he won the Izzy Prize for his work on RussiaGate, and that's what they're discussing. So you have two award-winning journalists, one who won an award for this specific topic. Does the Washington Post tell you that's what this is? Aaron, did they say in their article that that's what this was?
No, it's basically because this is aired on a Russian-backed channel, this is deemed to be automatically to be propaganda and to be Russia's point of view. Even though this is a discussion between two North American journalists, Chris Hedges has total independence on his show. Obviously, nobody is controlling me or telling me what to say. So we're having a discussion, but all of a sudden that's presented to Washington Post audiences as Russia's point of view. So in other words, the Washington Post is carrying out the very propaganda that it claims to be exposing right there because,
yes.
Yeah. And again, as I said, it doesn't even cite any of our actual views beyond basically mentioning that we talked about RussiaGate conspiracy theories, which is exactly what so much of RussiaGate was.
So here is the Washington Post making it look like two award-winning journalists. And by the way, the reason why Chris Hayes is at RT and not the New York Times.
Chris Hedges.
I'm sorry, Chris Hedges is at RT and not at the New York Times or somewhere else is because he had to leave the New York Times because famously he was telling the truth about the Iraq War and he wouldn't stop. And so the editors at the New York Times called him into a meeting and said, you got to stop doing this. And he said, well, I'm not going to. And they said, well, you can't work here anymore. And so he couldn't work there anymore. So he walked away. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist walked away from the #1 newspaper in the world because he has integrity and the New York Times doesn't. And this is the Washington Post also revealing that they don't have any integrity, that they are actually propagandists. They're owned by the richest man in the world. And if you think they're telling you the truth about fucking anything, that would make you a chump. I wouldn't trust the Washington Post as far as I could fucking throw it. And this is living proof. Right now, they literally wrote an article to slander two award-winning American journalists who are telling the truth. And they made it seem like they were the propagandists misinforming their audience. This is what happens in dictatorships. And I'll remind you of what Chomsky said, that any dictator would be thrilled with the uniformity and obedience of the U.S. corporate media. Thrilled, because that's what this is. This looks like it was written by the state, doesn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the language it uses, it talks about what are quote verified news sources. So implying that something like RT is not a verified news source. Well, who gets to decide what a verified news source is? Is it Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post or the U.S. State Department or these anonymous groups like Prop or Not, or this researcher, this guy who comes from Google? And by the way, even his own findings were disputed. So YouTube says that his math was off, and that's why at the end of the article they've appended an update that basically walks back some of this so-called experts' claims, because even his research about YouTube and its algorithm appears to be off base. So, but the implication here is that basically anything that challenges the prevailing narrative is not can't be a verified news source, and those that peddle propaganda in the service of the establishment, those are verified. And it's dangerous. It's a part of this culture we've seen throughout RussiaGate, amplified, where basically, and you've been the victim of this, Jimmy, where it's smeared in places like the Washington Post and elsewhere, right on CNN too, I think.
Yeah, CNN.
Where, those who challenge the prevailing consensus are deemed to be, suspicious, possibly the result of Russian propaganda. And those who prop up the establishment narrative, even if it turns out to be totally false, like the Iraq War was and now RussiaGate is, are deemed to be verified. And that's who we should trust. And this is used then to justify suppressing dissenting voices and amplifying the pro-establishment ones. And that's why someone like Rachel Maddow, the irony of her saying that YouTube promoting an interview that I'm in to be death by algorithm, the irony of her saying that is we're talking about the leading RussiaGate propagandist of the last 2 years, who's basically whose show night in, night out is every single night a combination of propaganda, falsehoods, and innuendo. And that's why when I responded to her with that long thread, just giving some of the many examples of the just outright falsehoods and propaganda that she's promoted on her show for 2 years, over 2 years.
So let's go. So I have a little bit more of that article I picked out and made graphics for. So let's go through it. This is from that article. It says, formerly known as Russia Today, RT is one of the most popular media channels on YouTube, claiming more than 2 billion views. Now, they say that. Now, to me, they write that in a way that's scary. Like, they're one of the most popular. Russia, do you know what's going on fucking YouTube? Do you know what's happening over there? That a lot of people are watching this Russia stuff, and they're tricking a lot, because that's what that is. But if you read it from a different perspective, like from a sane person who's not pushing propaganda, I would read that paragraph and I would say, wow, what is so popular about the news that is being offered by the RT channel in America? Let's remember that the RT channel in America is staffed by a lot of Americans, like people like Chris Hedges and Larry King and Lee Camp and Jesse Ventura. These are the people who work for RT in America, okay? So I would go, wow, I wonder what they're doing that makes them so goddamn popular. Why isn't MSNBC and CNN more popular? Oh, I know. That's because they push conspiracy theories that people who go to YouTube go there to get rid of, to get away from mainstream news media, and that's why they go there to get the truth that you can't get in mainstream news media. That's why they're so goddamn popular. But of course, the Washington Post is part of that establishment, so they're not going to tell you any of this. In fact, they're going to couch it in the exact opposite way, that this is something to be afraid of instead of something that we should be celebrating, that there's another way for people to get information.
You know, Jimmy, when I saw Chris Hedges, he mentioned to me, he covered a lot of the communist countries in the 80s, living under the Soviets. And he pointed out to me, he said that back then, if you wanted to get accurate information about what was going on in those countries, the best place to do it often was from American-funded networks. Because those, these broadcasts that were beamed in a bid to, weaken the Soviets, did provide in many respects an accurate picture of these communist dictatorships that people were living under. And I was thinking how kind of sad it is now that for an alternative point of view in the U.S., how people have to rely on now a Russian-funded network. Now, I don't agree with everything I see in RT. I think they do a lot of really unfortunate stuff and things I don't agree with. But it is also true that they do provide an alternative to the prevailing establishment narratives that are presented every day on MSNBC and CNN. And exactly, I agree. That's why it's so popular, is because people are dying for alternative sources of information, because they see on corporate television people, the journalists there, so many of them are not there anymore to inform people and to uphold the tradition of journalism, but they're there to propagate for the establishment narratives. And that's how you advance in a career now in cable television, and people see through it. And that's why they're seeking out alternative sources of information. And RT happens to be one of them, and it's benefited from it.
So here's their big criticism of your video with Chris Hedges. Here it is. The video interview it recommended, meaning the video that YouTube recommended that everybody has their underwear in a knot over, the video interview it recommended, posted by RT's U.S.-focused division, RT America, is sharply critical of the American press coverage of the Mueller report and calls journalists, quote, RussiaGate conspiracy theorists and, quote, gossiping couriers to the elite. So all this is on its surface true. But again, it's the way they're presenting this in the Washington Post. They're presenting it in a propagandistic way. Why? Because they're propagandists. Why? Because they work for the establishment. Why? Because they're owned by the richest guy the history of the fucking world has ever known, and that's what they're doing. So here we are, and they're saying that because you called them Russia conspiracy theorists, which is what it is, and because they are gossiping couriers to the elite, which is what they are, which is what Noam Chomsky proved in Manufacturing Consent years ago, they're posting it like you're somehow an enemy of the United States. That's what that is, right?
Look at that wording there, Jimmy. Sharply critical of American press coverage. So what kind of mindset deems it to be a threat for someone else to be sharply critical?
Right.
If you're a totalitarian,
yes,
to them, someone who is sharply critical, that is that's a no-go. You can't be sharply critical of the American press. So that's a totalitarian attitude. And that's why, again, that's the only thing they say there about the interview. They don't say we got this fact wrong.
Right.
We said this thing that was an argument that they disagree with, because they don't take on our actual views. They find us objectionable because we were sharply critical of the prevailing consensus. And that's it speaks to the culture that we're in now. If you're sharply critical, then you're marginalized, and we have to marginalize you further by attributing your sharp criticism to the work of Russia.
We'll move on. Shazlot, that's the guy who did this in-depth research on YouTube's recommendations, which, by the way, YouTube does not. They denounce. They say it's not. He's not accurate. He's not true. And watch how funny it is. This would be a funny paragraph for us to enjoy. Shazlot said in an interview Friday that while the RT video ultimately did not get massive viewership, what? So you're doing a fucking report, and Rachel Maddow is tweeting it out, and the Washington Post is writing a whole goddamn news story on a video that didn't get any fucking views? Yes. That's exactly what's happening. It ultimately only got 55,000 fucking views, which is not a lot of views. It was a great interview, but that's a very modest amount of views. All right. That's not a lot of views. The video that we did about Mueller report at this channel, I think got 3 times as many views as that. So, and that's just me in my Jagoff garage. Okay. That's not me with a TV studio and a fucking global network of people pushing a video. That's just me. We did 3 times as many as that. They're doing, this is all over again, nothing. This is like Russia's influencing our elections. Why? They spent $4,000 on fucking Facebook ads. Oh my God. That's what this is. And they're still doing it. I'll read the rest of the paragraph. It says the numbers of recommendations suggest that Russians have grown adept at manipulating not the Russian government, by the way, but the Russians. Could you imagine saying the Jews or the Mexicans? No, I couldn't imagine saying that. They fucking say it on the regular. That's called xenophobia. And that's what the Washington Post pushes while they pretend to oppose Donald Trump, who they don't really oppose. Which uses, so there you go. So they're trying to scare you. Oh my God, the Russians they've learned how to manipulate our minds. What about our bodily fluids? What about our bodily fluids, Aaron? That's what they're coming for them next, right?
Yeah. So
here,
and Jimmy, by the way, we've talked about this before, but a lot of this, I mean, there's so many components to this and the interest that this kind of fear mongering serves. But part of it is just basically it's a racket. It's a growth industry. If you are an independent researcher like this guy who comes from Google, he sets up some phony company, whatever this thing is called, Algo Truth, whatever this is, and if you put out work that fear mongers about Russia, then you're rewarded. And that's why you have all these little firms like New Knowledge, the firm behind that Senate report about Russian social media trolls posing a dire threat to the republic. If you can fearmonger about Russia, that means you're of use to those who profit from tensions with Russia. So you will get funding to do this stuff and to come up with reports. And basically, you are taking part in a massive American disinformation campaign to convince Americans that they're the victims of a Russian disinformation campaign. It's a racket. It's a hustle.
I spent my whole life growing up as a kid. All I remember is everybody trying to get us to realize that the Russian people were not the Russian government and that Russian people wanted the same things we did. That's why Bernie had a sister city with Burlington, Vermont in frickin' Russia, and they would go there every year. That's why Sting wrote that song, If Russian People Love Their People Too, love their children too. The whole thing was about trying, and we finally got there. In 2011, Barack Obama announced the Russian reset. He made fun of Mitt Romney for saying Russia was our geopolitical foe. We got there. We realized we were all just people, and then Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, and that was the end of that, right?
That's right, and that's why, by the way, now you're seeing so many pundits like Ronan Farrow, the New Yorker, among many, come out and say, you know what? I ridiculed Mitt Romney when he said that, but I was wrong.
Oh, my God.
And all these people are just lining up to apologize to Mitt Romney. It's pathetic. Oh, my God. And it's basically people showing that they are now falling back in line and that they are of service to the prevailing Russia fear-mongering. It's pathetic. It's such an indictment of our media and intellectual culture right now in 2019. It's really sad. So
just let's finish this Washington Post article, propaganda. It said the result, Chazlet said, could be a gradual, subtle elevation of Russian views online because such videos result in more recommendations and ultimately more views that can generate more advertising revenue and blah, 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 blah. Hey, and you know, and hydrogen and oxygen equal water. I don't know if you know that too. What the fuck? This is unbelievable. Again, this is the Washington Post. And of course, the only reporter from there I know personally is Dave Weigel, and he's horrible. So that's probably that. And this is another guy. This guy. No, so who are the good people at the? Well, we'll get to that at the end. Every time they make something more pro-Russian, they get more and more views, Chazlot said. That's extremely worrying. Do you hear this? This is... I just can't get over it. The Kremlin-backed media site, which the United States intelligence has called Russia's premier international propaganda arm, has often enjoyed top rankings in YouTube search results. It was also the first news channel to pass 1 billion views on YouTube in 2013. I'm pretty sure they got that wrong. Can you look up when the Young Turks got their first billion views? Pretty sure they got that wrong. But again, it's all scary. Russia's taking over YouTube, and your kids watch YouTube, so you better stop your kids from watching fucking YouTube, or you better pressure your government officials to stop YouTube from doing anything. That's what this is all about, censorship. This is the Washington Post wanting the government to censor YouTube and to keep propagating a RussiaGate narrative, which sells them more papers. RT's deputy editor-in-chief, Anna Bakina, said in a statement, RT produces high-quality, interesting, and original content. We're good, thus we're popular. People are always going to be jealous of number one. Senator Mark Warner said the findings again highlighted how tech companies should be doing more to combat disinformation and misuse. Everything MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York Times has published about RussiaGate over the last 2.5 years has been complete bullshit. So that's the stuff we should be censoring. But because they're lying at the behest of the establishment and people like Mark Warner, that's considered okay. That's legit lying. It's extremely concerning that YouTube still hasn't fixed the problem with its algorithm that make it so susceptible to gaming and questionable sources like RT. After 3 years of every news outlet in the United States being revealed to be conspiracy theorists with no evidence, this guy's worried about somebody else, a foreign government. He's worried about a foreign news agency, not the ones in the United States that have been completely lying to us. And here we go. YouTube, the world's largest online video service with 2 billion users, has been coming under increasingly sharp criticism over the past 2 years for a range of issues, including the ability of hate groups, conspiracy theorists, pedophiles, and others to manipulate the platform to spread content they favor. So these people are afraid of free speech.
Exactly right.
That's what
exactly
this is.
Right.
This is like, do you know that there's ideas getting out there that you don't like, and we better stop them? Yeah, it's called the printing press. That's when this all started, with the fucking printing press, and now we just have a video press. So now we have a video press called YouTube, and they don't like the shit that people are writing on their video YouTube press, and they want to stop it. So let's just finish real quick. It says, even if the efforts to combat misinformation have in some cases backfired, as happened this month when videos of the flaming collapse of the spire of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris were incorrectly identified by YouTube as imagery from September 11th, 2001 terrorist attack at the World Trade Center in New York. So here's the part where you said at the end, here's the part that the Washington Post admitted they even got wrong in the story that's decrying other people for getting shit wrong. They had to already post a correction to it. All right, and here we go. It says, an earlier version of this story incorrectly said that YouTube had recommended RT programming more often than other networks' programming for analysis of the Mueller report. In fact, some programming was recommended more often, but in Chaselot's analysis, none was recommended by as many channels as RT. So there you go. You can respond to any of that stuff I just said, but that is 100% propaganda, and that is them admitting that they got it wrong in their own story.
So, Jimmy, the Young Turks show hit 1 billion views in 2013, but the TYT network hit 1 billion views in 2012. So they did get it wrong.
So in 2012, the TYT network hit 1 billion views. Washington Post, wrong about that.
That's Jimmy being loyal to his old brand.
That's right.
Making sure they get their props. That's good. But the fact that RT has hit over 1 billion views, it shows again that people have been yearning for alternative sources of information to the verified news ones that the Washington Post and these shady watchdog groups want you to rely on. And I think what you said there about their hostility to free speech is so important. Like, these people, like growing up, I caught a bit of the end of the Cold War in my first 10 years of life. And it was all about how the Soviets want to, destroy our way of life. They hate free speech. They hate the free market. Well, what are these people doing? They're petrified of free speech. They want to justify increasing government and private control over it. And they also hate the free market, because here is RT, coming to America, doing what they're supposed to, which is, compete in the market, putting out content that they hope will attract people. It ends up being successful. And these people are petrified, and they want government regulation. They want the government. That's why Senator Mark Warner is getting involved. They want government and private corporations to crack down on it and regulate it. So they hate free speech and they hate the free market.
Next live Jimmy Dore show is June 5th. That's a Wednesday at Hermosa Beach Comedy Club in Hermosa Beach, California. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. We might be coming to your town. And if you love the show, please become a patron. Please support the show. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And please click that bell and make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are already subscribed, they unsubscribe people every day. Just check. Thanks for your support.